Hello again, Professor Rob's class. I just got an email, which gave me some of the topics that you guys will need to go over for your project. So, since my last video was a little bit rambly, I figured I would address those directly. So I got a little list here of 6 things that y'all are going to have to address. So, getting right into it. The first one here is immigration. I covered this in the last video, but for those who didn't watch it or didn't get through all of my babbling, the Libertarian Party is split on a lot of issues, all right? We're not 100% all together on everything all the time, but this is an issue where it's like, I'd say like 80-90% of the party is in agreement. We are an open borders party. We favor freedom of immigration. There are people in the party, to tip my hat to the whole argument in the Libertarian Party, there are those who think there might need to be minimal border restrictions or some sort of, a way to check who's coming in and out of the country. There are people who think that because of this coronavirus scare, like that you got to be able to keep sick people out and whatever. Those aren't positions that I necessarily hold, but again, the party has a lot of different opinions in it. So the thing to remember is our platform very specifically says we favor open borders. We don't believe the government has any business telling people what to do, where they can travel, just because of the place they were born. If you want to come to the U.S. to study or to work or to do whatever, just come on down, man. It's freedom. The second issue, healthcare. Gosh, that's a touchy one. It's kind of weird. The Libertarian Party, the one thing you know about us for sure is we don't favor government control or involvement in most things, and healthcare is no exception. Unfortunately, the Affordable Care Act did damage a lot of people's ability to get healthcare through other means. It rendered healthcare less effective and more expensive for a lot of poor people like myself. So I'm not sure which elements of healthcare I should speak to exactly, but I think the one that's on everyone's lips right now, a lot of my Democratic friends are talking about, Medicare for all. They want to universalize healthcare, but unfortunately this debate gets a little murky because they think that they're doing the right thing. My blue friends are really compassionate, and they're like, I want to make healthcare available for everybody, but I think that term is a little misleading. What we're talking about is health insurance. We're not talking about healthcare. We're not talking about passing doctors out to people. We're talking about funding through taxpayer revenue, a system which I believe is somewhat corrupt. I think that the insurance industry is a failure in a lot of ways, and I don't think that we should be propping it up with tax dollars further. I think that because of the guarantee that we will, the pharmaceutical industry, which is unbearably corrupt, can get away with murder and essentially jack up the price on medications knowing that that will be subsidized by taxpayers. So this is an issue where I think that unfortunately handing more power to the state results in consequences we didn't anticipate. We think we're doing the compassionate thing, but universalizing state-run healthcare I think would be bad for the people who need it most, and myself included. I don't want the government running these things. They've been pretty ineffective with my healthcare. Economics. Well, that's a tricky one as well. The Libertarian Party is not... We don't all universally agree on one economic philosophy. In fact, I'm an oddball. Not only am I an anarchist, but I'm like a libertarian leftist. So some of my positions are very unorthodox within the party. But as far as economics, we got a whole spectrum of people, from right-leaning to left-leaning and everything in between. There are folk called Georgists who are also left libertarians, but they believe the one and only ethical tax is a land value tax. So they would do away with everything like income taxes and all this, but they would tax the value of land held by private people or by corporations, and that would be your one tax for all citizens. Again, that's not universal across the party. That's just one fringe belief. But I hope to illustrate that we don't universally agree on economics. Where the market is concerned, most libertarians are laissez-faire capitalists. Most of them, and myself to a degree, we do favor free markets above most things. We would like to see price fixing and putting the thumb on the scale of the free market. We got to get out of that. One example is, it's not a comfortable thing to talk about, but consider the way the shelves look here in California right now. How because of this scare, everything is off the shelves. You can't get hand sanitizer or toilet paper or these things. I have friends who believe that the correct, California's law against price gouging is a good thing. They think that preventing people from jacking up the price at the last minute during a disaster will help you from screwing over poor people. And that feels right. If you're anything like me, that sounds good to your ears. You're like, yeah, why should some company jack up the price on a product and screw people over in the time they need it most? And I think that that's a fair argument where things like water or food are concerned, things that you need to survive. But let's consider toilet paper. Because toilet paper is a luxury. Not to be gross, there are other ways to clean yourself. You know, that's a very American thing. Like, toilet paper is not a thing all around the world. So it's not necessary for you to survive. It's nice. Consider that by having laws in place that prevent companies from raising the price of toilet paper, there's no disincentive for a person to go and just buy it all. So panicking, fear of missing out, you're going to go down there and one individual can buy up as much toilet paper as possible for this, artificially low price maintained by the government, where price gouging, this activity we agree feels kind of greedy and gross, it actually is a disincentive for people to purchase more than they need. And it serves as a market signal to other sellers that there's money to be made here. So I can't say what's right. Look, I'm just like everybody else. I'm trying to sort things out in the world. But my understanding is that these price-fixing laws, these price gouging laws, don't actually help us. If anything, they're the reason the shelves are so empty right now. Muting market signals and government involvement in the free market tends to be negative, and it tends to have consequences we don't anticipate. So, not to babble, but there's a lot going on with libertarian economics. The one thing that we most agree on, taxation is theft. We don't believe the government should be repurposing private wealth for, military projects abroad. And in general, just we favor free trade, the freedom to make contracts, all this sort of thing. So let's see. Education. This is my personal passion topic, I suppose. Education is what got me into politics, and that's why we're all talking right now, because you're in class. So, education. State involvement in education, government manipulation of education has been 100% negative across the board. A lot of libertarians would favor the complete abolition of a public school system at all. That's a little tough for me to conclude. It's tough for me to say I would get rid of public education, because in my mind, if we got rid of the public school system right now, something new would arise tomorrow, because people would voluntarily contribute to a communal education pool. We want kids to be educated. I have no children. I want children to not be stupid. So I feel like we all kind of have a vested interest in making sure the next generation is moral and decent and well educated. So I feel like getting rid of public education is like, it's a pipe dream. It's going to come back. So the real question for me is, how do you make it effective? And right now, the way guaranteed student loans work, the way that grants work, the Pell Grant, which a lot of you are probably collecting just like me, what these have done, this guaranteed money, which feels good. It feels good to know that we're investing in our students, right? That feels like the right thing to do. But what has this done? It's driven up the cost of tuition more than 500% since the 70s. It's driven the cost of education up such that we can't afford it. Our parents and their parents were talking about, we went to college and paid for it with our summer jobs. Yeah, bro, because the dollar had value back then, and because school cost next to nothing. Nowadays, dude, to go get your education, you're going to go into a significant amount of debt, which kind of ruins your next few years after college. It leaves you straddled with a burden that I don't think is right when you're trying to just start out your life or your family or your business or whatever you're up to. So education is very dear to me. I think that what you're doing, what I did when I graduated from Pierce, is a valuable process. To commit yourself fully to self-betterment, to try to study and understand the world, to meet with other people who don't share your ideas, and to develop connections with people smarter than yourself, like your professor or your friends. I think that's a valuable thing, and I want to preserve it. I want education to be effective, but I recognize that the current state of education is not beneficial to the taxpayers nor to the students. This is driving costs up and effectiveness down, and I think there's a lot that could be done to make education better. First of all, I might make it a little bit more competitive. If, maybe make these schools, incentivize them to do more than teach to the test by paying teachers better. If you're a really effective teacher, like our mutual friend Professor Rob, if you really put in that extra effort for your students, I believe you deserve to earn more than a teacher who's perhaps sitting on their hands and counting on tenure to carry them. But that's a personal opinion. Let's move on. Military, veterans, foreign affairs. I sure do wish I knew quite what was meant by this. I covered in the last video that we oppose militarism in the Libertarian Party. We genuinely believe we need to bring the troops home. Foreign intervention abroad has only made life in America more dangerous. It certainly hasn't defended me or my liberties at all. But when we get into stuff like veterans, foreign affairs, I wonder what is meant here. If we wish to honor our veterans, if we wish to do good, right by them, these people who have made this ultimate commitment to protect us and who've said, I'm willing to, I'm willing to die for these principles. We should honor their commitment by not sending them to fight in frivolous battles that have nothing to do with us. We should respect them. We should love the troops by not sending them to die in battles that have basically ruined generations of Americans' lives, leaving them with PTSD and irreparable damage to their bodies and to their hearts. I would argue that if we want to respect our veterans, we need to stop sending them to do things that don't make us safer, you know? They signed up for a reason. They signed up to protect us. They didn't sign up to defend oil interests. They didn't sign up to protect the Saudi government. They didn't sign up to defend things that have nothing to do with the United States. So that's all I got to say about that. Foreign affairs. Look, dude, if we're going to send anything to a foreign country, let it not be troops. Let it be books. Let it be medicine or food or teachers. Let it be scientists. Let it be engineers. If we're going to send aid to countries, and maybe we should, we're very wealthy, we can afford to do that. Not all libertarians are. There's libertarians who would hate to hear me say that. They're like, no foreign aid. They're right about some things. But in my heart, I'm like, okay, so we're a wealthy nation. If someone's truly suffering, I'm not immediately opposed to sending stuff over there. But stop sending the military. Stop putting boots on the ground everywhere. Why do we need tanks and helicopters in every place? You know, if we're going to help, let's just help. You know, we're not going to fight your battles. We're not going to arm your militants. We're not going to get involved in your arming these little groups that later turn out to be terrorist cells. We got involved with the Free Syrian Army, and they turned out to be ISIS. So let's just stop dumping guns and missiles and rockets into these burning dumpsters. Let's instead fucking send genuine aid. Let's help people if we're going to help them. And otherwise, stay the hell out of their business. Stop wasting American treasure and American blood. The environment and climate change. Well, the Libertarian Party, as I've said a few times, we don't all agree on everything. And I'd say that there's an element of older cats, real old cats, who are kind of on this Alex Jonesy kind of, it's all a conspiracy, and like, okay, so that's fine. You're a little kooky and everything. Most of the younger cats, even the real conservative ones, seem to be on board. They're like, yeah, climate change either is happening and needs immediately addressed, or we can't prove that humans are the reason climate change is happening, but it wouldn't be bad for us to cut carbon emissions anyway, because why poison our air? So, like, they're very pragmatic. Even the people I know who are like, that climate change, that's a sham. Most of them genuinely favor, progressive environmental policies, if not imposed by the government, just kind of voluntarily. Like, we should all be moving towards, cutting fossil fuels out of our lives and things like this. I know a lot of libertarians, myself included, who would identify as green. Like, I have a lot in common with my colleagues in the Green Party, with the exception that they tend to favor a lot more government involvement. They'd like to give control of these issues to the state, where I would argue, while I share in many of your environmental desires, I want to see things protected. I don't want to see rampant toxicity and poisoning of our environment. I don't think the government is a good vehicle for achieving that, especially because the government is kind of in bed with these companies. Like, they're allowing people to go out and poison the land. So, I mean, like, how are we going to count on them to have sound environmental policies when they're propping up these corporations that are kind of the source of the problem? And if we're going to be real, not to go back to point number 5, but the biggest contributor to pollution in the entire planet is the United States military. All right? If you bring them home and stop putting tanks and missiles and planes everywhere, like, we would have a far smaller carbon footprint. There's a lot to get into with the environment, but yeah, if one of you cats identifies as green, or if you feel like you're real motivated to see animals and plant life protected, I mean, I sympathize. I think that you have good intentions there, but any such person, I would argue to you that the government will not be a reliable comrade in that endeavor. I think that's about it. I meant to do this in 5 minutes, and it took apparently 14, so I kind of sucked there. But I hope that some of that was useful to you. I'll put this up on YouTube as well. And if there's anything else, you can send me some questions. Good luck to you, friends.